Right now, despite what the U.S. Supreme Court ruled regarding Roe v. Wade, and despite Michigan state law that bans abortion care will not be prosecuted against. That reminder from pro-abortion Attorney General Dana Nessel came out yesterday. There is a temporary injunction in effect that prohibits prosecution based on that 1931 law. Court of Claims Judge Elizabeth Gleicher made that ruling in May, even though Nessel said she would not prosecute the law anyway. But, Kevin, there's still a law on the books that makes abortion a felony, and that's where the confusion right now comes in and where clarity is going to be needed.
And this out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The Kent County prosecutor said he does not feel he could ignore Michigan's 1931 ban on performing abortions. He did say he's going to await pending legal decisions on this, but he says, I have always held that it would be improper for me to pick and choose the laws I wish to enforce. That's Chris Becker out of Kent County. So you can see there's still a lot of confusion and concern and different opinions on how to move forward. Dana Nessel saying she will not prosecute anyone at any time, no matter what the courts say. So join us now is Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and attorney. Roshini, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. This is a really sticky and tricky situation, and you're seeing not only in Michigan, but all over the country where there are these different kinds of decisions being made by states' attorney generals and others, like you say, the county attorneys. And it will be confusing for a while until there's more court action or even more so legislative action.
So despite the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, in Michigan, they're saying right now it's business as usual. Abortions are legal. How are they able to do that? That's because of this injunction?
Yeah, it is because of the injunction, but however, that is temporary, so we have to keep that in mind. This is also a situation where we look at the federal versus the states' rights, and we are a country of states' rights. We talked about this on your show last week also, and this is going to be a huge test in modern times because we have gotten so used to things being, like, for example, gay marriage. Once it became more accepted among each state, it just became something that we accept across the whole land. So this is a case-by-case situation that, fortunately or unfortunately, the United States Supreme Court has unleashed across all of our states. But it is not insurmountable. That is something we have to remember. We are now back at the grassroots level where it still is up to legislatures to do what they're going to do. And it is also possible that our federal branch of the legislature, the Congress, the Senate, the United States legislative branch, could look at legislation that would be a federal mandate. Now, it seems unlikely that could pass in the current situation. However, that is something that could have happened in all these intervening years since 1973 when Roe v. Wade came down.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, essentially, the Supreme Court put the power back in the voters' hands and the people's hands. And if that means that the people they elected to decide, the Michigan legislature, then it would be their decision. But it also could ultimately be the people's decision more personally if like this petition drive goes through and they actually get a proposal to the people to vote on. How does that work?
Right. Well, we also have to look at each state. So some of what's happening in your state of Michigan, Kevin and Tom, could be different from other states. So it starts with what are the laws of your individual constitution? That's where it starts. So the state constitution of Michigan, as for Michigan on these issues, will win out over anything that's happening in a county in Michigan or a city in Michigan. And it really is in the people's hands. And it is also up to your state legislature, if this 1931 law is being mentioned, maybe some of these laws need to be taken out or ruled just too old or we're modernizing. Those kinds of things are all in the hands of the legislature. What the courts can do is interpret the laws as they stand. And in this situation, I don't think anyone's really going to fight this injunction that your attorney general has put out there. But there are a lot of court cases that look like they're coming out in your state from both sides of this issue. That will ultimately then go to the courts. But the ultimate result, it's going to change, and we could go back and forth for a while on what's legal, what's not legal. That is why it's so crucial for every state legislature to get into action and to clarify these things, to lift some of the confusion that's happening across our country.
You know, Governor Whitmer, and you mentioned the courts, she is, in addition to what now the legislature is trying to do, is defend the 1931 law against Planned Parenthood in this case. But Governor Whitmer is now moving pretty quickly. She has sent out another request for the Michigan Supreme Court to rule immediately that the state constitution protects abortion rights. Now, I know you're in Minnesota. Michigan it's a pretty similar constitution in this relation as it is to the U.S. Constitution. They're trying to put in this, right to privacy kind of argument in that. Based on that, what are the arguments that abortion is clearly constitutionally protected under those arguments of privacy and the like?
Right. So they have to be careful that they don't fully align that with the United States Constitution, because as of this Dobbs decision, that's what Judge Alito and the majority of the United States Supreme Court said. The U.S. Constitution doesn't use the privacy piece to protect and give people the right to an abortion. So for Michigan and your governor to prevail here is their side of the arguments in front of the Michigan Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court decides in Michigan to hear this case, is that they have to make their own, they have to find a language in your Constitution that says, yes, indeed, the right to an abortion or abortion rights are protected in our state of Michigan. And if that prevails, then, Tom, the people of Michigan then are allowed that right. So it actually would not help them to bring in anything out from the federal at this time based on this Roe v., overturning of Roe v. Wade with the latest decision.
Well, the language that this judge, Elizabeth Gleischer, she's in the Court of Claims, she made the legal argument in ruling against Michigan's abortion law that said the state cannot require, quote, forced pregnancies. And that's why she ruled against the abortion ban, saying it was unconstitutional because it was a forced pregnancy. Is that a legal argument that can stand, that the state is forcing women to be pregnant?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Again, this is where it really matters who's in those seats, who's the judge, as well as who's arguing on both sides of this and who prevails, because that is one way to look at state coercion. And if the argument can prevail that you're being forced to remain pregnant, and that is not going to be allowed in the state of Michigan, then that the abortion ban really can't stand, right? So again, it's both beautiful and frustrating about the way our country runs, is that in the current time, what is the ethos, what are the morals of a particular group of people? And right now we're talking about the people of Michigan, and what can the persuaders, so I'm going to say the attorneys, in a certain situation, we could call your governor a persuader, but she won't be the one arguing it in front of your Supreme Court. Can she enlist to influence how she wants your Constitution to be interpreted? And will those justices, go that way? That's really the big $1 million question for any state that is trying to get this in front of its own Supreme Court, as well as these different legislatures that are, currently trying to do whatever they're doing. Depending on the state, they're actually trying to enforce abortion laws that are on the books. And in some states, they're trying to repeal those laws or at least write new ones.
Yeah. What's happening here in Michigan is playing out all across the country. And right here, Attorney General Dana Nessel reminding us that abortion cannot be prosecuted because of this temporary injunction. We appreciate your perspective. Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and attorney as well. Roshini, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.